And I believe we are good to go. Hello, everyone. We apologize for getting started a little late. We had some technical difficulties, but as you know, in the world of Zoom, we are not modeling perfection, but modeling new ways to bring ourselves together and get new information. Um, so for those who don't know, my name is Robert. I use he, him pronouns, and I work at Max Ottawa. And on behalf of the organization that I work for, and also for my personal platform, happy Pride, and welcome to prioritizing 2SLGBTQ plus Indigenous health needs, part two. Um, for those who are familiar with Max, we had a previous discussion back in May with 3 to 4 panelists who are joining us today. Because that was so popular and because you all enjoyed that so much and because we learned so much, Max is really happy that we get to have a part two of this discussion. So first and foremost, it's with gratitude and respect that Max Ottawa acknowledges that we operate on the traditional, unceded, and unsurrendered territories of the Algonquin Anishinaabeg people. Today, this land is home to many diverse First Nations, Metis, and Inuit people, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to work upon this land in this territory. Also, as outlined in our most recent strategic direction, Max Auto is really committed to listening and learning to our Indigenous queer family members. And so it's really, like I said, just an honor to be able to provide this space and time for Howard, Andrew, and Albert to be with us to share their thoughts on this continued and necessary conversation. Um, so what I'm going to do is just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone before I turn it over to Howard, who's going to be our moderator. This is going to be about a 45 to 60-minute discussion. There is time and room for questions. So if you have any, I will be monitoring questions on Facebook, in the comment thread and on live. So if you have any questions for the panelists as they're discussing, please message those. And hopefully we'll have time at the end to get to as many as possible. And please remember to be kind and respectful in your questions and comments. These folks are giving up their time and energy to be here with us. And we want to make sure that they feel just as welcome virtually as we would welcome them in person. And lastly, what I'm going to just share is a couple Max announcements. I like to get those out of the way first, so that way at the end we have time for conclusion and can wrap things up. And so for those who are not familiar, because we might be reaching a larger audience due to the fact that this is the Ottawa Pride season, we are a nonprofit community-based organization that focuses on health and wellness for guys and to guys, whether cis or trans, in the capital region. We also have a lot of great partnerships for our broader LGBTQ plus community members. And so we're really proud that we have several new programs for our community members, guys and to guys. That's designed to help with their mental and social support during COVID. So we recently launched a peer support program where folks can connect with a volunteer for 45 minutes for listening air. That's on Mondays and Thursdays. We have a new harm reduction delivery or in-person pickup program that takes place every Wednesday and Friday. And we also did a soft launch recently of our Coaching with Max program, which is personal time that you get with a peer coach to help you develop 1 or 2 goals. That's over 4 to 6 sessions. And so you can find all of that information on our website, maxottawa.ca. Those programs are listed on our front page and also under programs. We also, like as I mentioned, have partnerships to reach a broader audience. And so last 2 things is that in conjunction with the Ottawa Senior Pride Network, we've recently launched a technology lending program for queer seniors. So folks can come to the office or we can deliver a tablet to folks' home to help them get connected via technology. And also as part of Connected Canadians, there's also going to be some future events to help folks get access to learning skills for those who need it. And secondly, there's many partnerships at the moment that are involved with the getitkit.ca program. As you know, self-testing for HIV, many people have been working on it and getting it into Canada for a very long time. And Ottawa is a pilot city for a new program where you can order a self-testing kit. It will be delivered to your home along with other sexual health products. You mail the kit back. And hopefully with the success of that program, we can help bring that nationwide. So if you're interested in that, go to getakit.ca and you can find out more information. So that's it. Enough about me. I'm going to turn it over to Howard. He's our moderator. He's also the founder and co-director and programmer for the Asanake Film Festival, which I hope you saw later. I know that's coming up. We're also really happy to have Dwayne Morrissey Beck, who's a senior policy analyst for the Métis National Council in Ottawa, here in Ottawa. And we also have Andrew Martin, who's an artist and actor, best known for his lead role in the 2014 feature film Fire Song. And they're also going to tell us more about themselves as well. So without further ado, Howard, please take it away.
All right. Thanks for that great intro. Osho ani Howard Indishnaabeg, wabjeshi nodem nezat kangdonjaba, kitchenendam nongom. My name's Howard, and my community is Lac-des-Blancs First Nation in Northwestern Ontario, but I live here in Ottawa, and it's really nice to be in this Zoom call with you all today. Yeah, let's just start. Maybe if you guys each want to also introduce yourselves in your own way. I know that Dwayne maybe had a name change. Things change, maybe let us know what your preferred pronouns are, because, those things can change too. So, yeah, we'll jump in.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Howard, and thank you, Robert. Yes, there has been a name change. So I've changed my name to my birth name, which is Albert Beck. And so everything is still in the paperwork process. So I'm stuck in between, the legal and the soon to be legal name change. So, and that's I was part of the child welfare system. I'm part of the 60 Scoop, and it took me almost 52 years to come to this point where I'm now making those changes. So, and I'm Métis, and I'm from Crane River, Manitoba, and live in Algonquin territory in the city of Ottawa. And I am a senior policy analyst at the Métis National Council. So I'm happy to see everybody back again, and I look forward to our conversation.
Cool. Congrats on the name change. That's awesome.
Thank you.
I'll get used to calling you Albert. Can I call you Al?
You can call me anything you want. I think so far I've got Bert. So it's whatever anybody wants to call me, as long as it's fine.
Cool. How about you, Andrew? Any name changes?
No name changes. No. No. My name is Andrew. I go by either Andrew Martin or my professional name, Andrew White Martin. I'm from the Mohawk Nation, and I am originally from the Six Nations of the Grand River Territory Reserve. I lived in Ottawa for about 4 years, and just in the recent months, finally made the move to Toronto. So now I'm kind of back in familiar territory. I'm kind of back around where I grew up and the area that I'm from. And as for my acting career, I've been in the industry for about 12 years now, 12-ish years now. And yeah, just continuing to grow from there and see where I go and where it takes me.
Cool. So yeah, I guess that was my first question, is like, where are you guys all right now physically? But I guess we kind of covered that. Me and Albert are in Ottawa, and you're in Toronto, right?
Yeah. I think the last time I ended up in Winnipeg and was stuck in Winnipeg for 4 months. So I ended up staying there. There was a death in their family. actually 2 deaths in our family, and I ended up going there to deal with the family loss of 2 family members, and ended up being stuck in
Wow.
Winnipeg with family, of course, which it kind of all worked out. And my job was actually having me wanting to work there too as well. So I was kind of everything worked out, but didn't like the one of the major reasons why I was there. So, but yeah, back in Ottawa again. I'm out at Christie Lake, just working from our little fifth wheel here at Christie Lake. Some peace and quiet.
That's nice. How about you, Andrew? Are you all settled in Toronto? I know because you just moved there. So how's that going? It's that must have been interesting to move during COVID times, and what's it been like for you?
It's been a little crazy. I mean, back when I was first supposed to move here, the place that I was going to move into actually kind of fell through. So I had to completely, I don't know, I had to go right back to the drawing board and start from zero again and trying to find a place to live. And I was successful. So I've just been kind of slowly getting things together ever since June, when I first officially moved into the place that I'm at now. And it's been a little weird trying to get things together, because I know there are certain things that I wasn't able, that just weren't on hand, like being able to get my room set up and everything like that, the mail being behind, so certain things weren't coming on time or at all even. So it was it wasn't challenging or difficult, it was just frustrating, I'll say.
All right. I guess my first kind of question, well, yeah, I don't know. I've already asked a couple questions, but my next question is just generally how are you all maintaining your well-being and your mental health and your health in general during these during the state of the world that we're in right now? Anyone want to go first?
I don't know. I wouldn't say that I've been holding it together, but it's, I have a job that keeps me busy fairly often. I'm teaching myself a couple of different things. Well, not necessarily teaching myself, but I am taking the time to learn how to do web development. So keeping myself busy in that sense as well. And yeah, just taking on responsibility at work and just preparing for when the world does kind of come back online a little bit more, and just in general.
Cool. Sounds like you're keeping busy. That's great. I think I've been doing that too. We got the Anishinaabeg Film Festival. We postponed it till September, and so and we're doing it all online. So I've been pretty. The past month has been pretty heavy on programming, doing the final programming and communicating with artists, and so I've been in work mode for the past month. Before that, I was in isolation beading mode. I was doing a lot of bead work, beaded like a full vest.
I heard eating. I was going to say I did a lot of eating too. Don't worry about that.
I also ate a lot too. Yeah. I don't think I gained any weight though. I think I'm incapable of gaining weight. It's
Lucky.
Yeah. How about you, Albert? How have you been staying healthy?
Well, I mean, I think I've gone through a lot of transitions with our family. I lost a brother to suicide in February, and then I lost a niece who I never actually ever met to a fatal overdose on drugs. And so things have been pretty, tender in terms of sort of where my mental health is. And I think part of the whole COVID thing has really sort of compounded a lot of the sort of sadness and anxiety that I sort of been dealing with. But I think part of the process is I'm in the process of grieving. And so I'm really taking that time to sort of let that process. It's been a long time since I've been very sad and unsure of things and those kind of things. But I think part of the grieving process is sort of go through those feelings, but also I try to find some place where I can really kind of take some time and just really spend time outside. Like we're at the lake now, so I find just going and spending time by the water and just relaxing and just taking it in there. I really find that that's been helping for my mental wellness. I think it doesn't take place the need for, probably there's going to be a need for some therapy to sort of help me with that process, but I find that I'm doing okay now. So thanks.
Well, I'm sorry to hear about the losses in your family. That sounds really like tough times for you, and I hope you and your family are going through. Yeah.
Thank you.
Andrew, do you want to weigh in on any health related things? Like, have you been coping with things, or?
I'll go ahead and say that like I think I'm coping just as well as most people are these days. Definitely there are days where it feels like I just feel super tired, and like I've been hearing this new term called COVID fatigue or whatever it is, or exhaustion. And like I've been thinking about that lately. Like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. Like, because every time you go outside, there is like that anxiety of like, did I bring my mask with me? Am I like, am I going to be able to, like, did I forget this? And then when you're inside the spaces, it's just like this person standing way too damn close to me, and like so it's just like, it's just little things like that that I think over time kind of build up. And so there's usually for me like maybe a day in my week where I'm just kind of like, I just feel really like super exhausted and tired sometimes. And but I think with my own with like my own temperament, it's just like this, like for me anyways, because it is just that, like it's for me, and I just think about it like I just need to like take a breath and just realize that, yeah, like this is how things are right now, but like it can't be like this forever. And as long as I'm taking care of myself and making sure that I'm doing my due diligence, then there should nothing bad should happen.
Well, I forget my mask all the time. Like I always have to like go back in the house and get it, or go back in the car to get it. And it's a constant struggle. So I guess my next question is, do you think that like two-spirit people are like just like being disproportionately affected by like the state of the world, being both kind of having these intersecting identities? Do you think that affects specifically two-spirit people when things like a global pandemic happen? It's kind of an open-ended question, kind of broad, but guys, if you have any thoughts on those? Like for example, as I've heard stories of like queer youth that have to like move back in with their families and stuff during COVID, and that can be problematic if their families aren't always accepting. Like that's one example I can think of where LGBTQ plus youth can be disproportionately affected by things like that. And I'm wondering if how Indigenous queers and Indigenous people and queer people are disproportionately being affected by the state of the world. You know, any anecdotes or personal stories to share?
I think that they are, and this is just really adding more of another layer of complexity to their lives. I mean, I'm on the Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls subcommittee for Two-Spirit people, and we are really trying to iron out a action plan. We're pounding on an action plan and looking at the, I don't know how many, I think it was over 200 recommendations that were made in that report. And there is, although, you know, two-spirited people were included, they weren't part of the mandate. They were sort of an afterthought, but they were included. A lot of the recommendations that are within that scope of that document have some limited purpose in terms of how the different institutions or policies or history of two-spirit people have impacted their lives. And so when we look at the social economic outcomes, health outcomes, justice outcomes, the right for like even the right to practice culture, a lot of them are meet barriers when they want to practice and to live a life that is free from violence and from systemic discrimination and so forth. So I think COVID is another, you know, layer of complexity. Simply, when we look at the economic fallout, a lot of two-spirit people work in the, for example, in the service industry. So there, a lot of the restaurants and you know, retail and other sectors of the economy, a lot of them have been laid off, and we're seeing a large contingent of women have lost their jobs. So there, I mean, if you look at the socioeconomic and you look at how that sort of manifests and affects your health and your mental wellness, I think you can put those all together, and really it's a very toxic way of being. So it's really going to really affect your mental health. I mean, for me, I look at it, you know, even just having a job and working as a two-spirited person. I mean, I feel very, you know, closed in. I think our world just became very, really small. So for those that are actually stuck at home or not able to work or are not well, and they do not have the supports that they require, it's very compounded and very certainly puts them at a disadvantage.
Andrew, do you have any, do you want to weigh in on the question about being affected by things as a two-spirit person, or as digital queers, or as you know, having multiple identities and the intersection of these identities with the current state of the world?
Yeah, I don't really have any personal stories pertaining to myself being a two-spirited person. Just more similar to last time. Just dealing with Indigenous organizations, and part of the job that I'm in right now, I'm dealing with a couple, not on my own behalf anymore, but on the behalf of others, and just kind of realizing that these organizations that we're trying to reach out to get others help are they're not very efficient in the way that things are being run right now. So if, for example, like some days I'm tasked with calling one organization that might just deal with housing, and I have called them 5 times, and I on my way home from work, I can walk by their office and I can clearly see that there's people in there, but they haven't answered the phones, or sent emails and there's been no reply. So for me, it's working on, like, in the position that I am right now. I'm finding it very frustrating that some of these organizations, though they are saying that they're open and that you can contact them, that their responses are very lagging. And I went, I believe, almost a month at one point without hearing from anybody. And it wasn't until I repeatedly called and pestered that I had somebody finally answer me back. And I thought, like, if I myself as an individual have to work this hard on my own behalf, and somebody who's just brand new trying to come to the city is looking at that, and somebody who might not have ever lived in the city before, that's a very daunting task in my mind, and that can be off-putting, in my opinion. So it's, for me, not so much the fact of being an Indigenous Two-Spirit person or anything like that. Like, none of my experience has been around that. It's just been largely around, as an Indigenous person, dealing with organizations, and then specifically dealing with Indigenous organizations.
Yeah, I wonder about how much those organizations are also being like overwhelmed by things, and that it's having a ripple down effect on people like yourself that are trying to access those organizations for support, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I do take that into account as well. But, you know, again, their efficiency is one thing, and being able to get off emails, or at least acknowledge that, you know, an email is being sent. Even in my position, I at least acknowledge that I've received and that I will be in touch shortly. You know what I mean? Not so much I'm waiting a month and then all of a sudden there's no answers, you know? So like for me, that's just been the frustrating end of it. Not, like I said, not so much being an Indigenous Two-Spirit person, but just being an Indigenous person during all of this.
All right, well, that kind of leads to my next question. I'm curious about, like, I mean, like the global pandemic is one thing, but there's also like the ongoing forms of colonialism, right? And specifically with your community, Andrew, Six Nations, they're having protests in Caledonia right now, blockades, you know, just like they had, was it mid 2000s, like 2005, 2006, a big standoff at that time. And they're doing it again about the same, it's basically the same thing, right? Fighting for the rights. And I was wondering if you have, well, both of you, Albert and if you have any thoughts just specifically about that case, and more broadly about like existing as Indigenous people and fighting for rights, even during times of global pandemics, and thoughts between these two different forces. And, sorry, was that too broad?
You can take this one, Andrew.
I'll leave it to, I haven't even lived in my community for a year. Okay, I've been seeing and I've been hearing, I haven't necessarily been reading up or educating myself on it. I do know about like the situation surrounding it. Band Council sold off a plot of land and the community didn't know about it, and now there's people who are angry about it, and rightly so. You know, but again, this is like, for my community specifically, this is not the first time that this has happened. This is not, you know, this probably, you know, I wish I could say it would be the last time, but in my, you know, in the back of my mind, I know that that's probably not going to be the case, unfortunately. But I think in the way that how things are right now, I do definitely think COVID has brought a lot of, has like kind of made people like hold a lot of things in, because people were kind of really isolated for a little while there. And especially back home, I know that there are people that aren't used to that, because we do live so close to a city. They're used to being able to go into town, and they're used to being able to do this and do that. And then all of a sudden, to leave the reserve and to come back onto the reserve, it's, you know, it's a process, because of, at the time there was the checkpoints. So I can see where maybe that plays into it, where you have the community starting to get a little bit restless, and then all of a sudden this, you know, this spark flies and it ignites something. And especially now, everybody's a little bit more aware than they were before, I think, in my own head. Because we do have a little bit more time on our hands for a lot of people. And we are able to maybe divide our attention between a couple of different things, rather than just work, home, and then, you know, if you have kids, you're focusing on them, or caretaking. So now you're just focusing on a couple of other things, and you've got a little bit more space to think about something else. So I definitely do think that COVID helped to compound a lot of that stuff, and to that it created the, I don't know, the firecracker bundle that it turned into.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but also think of like Black Lives Matter and the the way that Indigenous people and people of color just like have to fight for their stand up for their against oppression and discrimination for rights, even in the state of the world. Like even if you have to go protest in the street, you have to set up blockades to protect your territory, even when there's like like a medical health threat, when you're putting yourself at risk of not only like police violence and backlash from the settler state, but also like putting yourself at personal and risk of like contracting a virus. So I can't help but look at these things in that way.
They are definitely in the same vein, because even here in Toronto, I can walk around the neighborhood where I work, and I could be walking past a restaurant, and one of the restaurants will openly have a little portion on their board that says Black Lives Matter, and then there's another one that says that supports Indigenous rights as well. And then they have there's one board in particular that I see every day on my way in that says support Indigenous, Black, POC businesses and organizations. And then they give a list of what these organizations are and what these businesses are. So there are definitely parallels in the way that both of these situations have been evolving, I think, since the beginning of the pandemic. And like I said, I think it comes down to a lot of people being able to, before maybe not having necessarily like the time to kind of focus on one thing, but now we have all this time, and a lot of people are finally realizing like, yeah, this shit's fucked up, there's not much other way to put it. But just in knowing that, people are kind of starting to come around and realize and open their eyes that, yeah, those of us out there who are a person of color or who are Indigenous or who are Black or a Black person, we definitely do suffer discriminations on a daily basis, whether that's in microaggressions or whether that's in very boisterous aggression, so.
Yeah. How about you, Albert? Do you think do you have any thoughts on the ideas of like being a person of color, being Indigenous in times of global pandemic, but also fighting for rights and fighting against colonialism?
Well, I mean, I think, like as a Métis citizen, I mean, we've been fighting colonialism since before Canada became a country. We won a battle against the Canadian state in Frog Lake, and we kicked Canada's ass. And of course, we lost the rebellion, but it was part of the Canadian state's, overall mantra to, remove and destroy the Métis people and the Métis nation. And so, 100 and skip ahead 100 and some years, and not forgetting what's happened from that time to today. A lot of our citizens live in poverty. We lived on the road allowance, which is the ditches of Crown lands in the 30s, or pardon me, not in the 30s, in maybe I think it was probably about maybe 100 years ago. I'm not too brushed up on the timeline, but I think it's probably 1930s. A lot of our people live in poverty, and it's all based on land, right? And so the colonization on the Métis Nation specifically has taken its toll on our people. And we are like our First Nations and Inuit family members and brothers and sisters or community members. We run parallel in many of the political and human rights violations that continue to sort of impact our health and well-being as a people. And so, I mean, I think, when we look at sort of what's going on right now with COVID, and I think you're right, a lot of people have time to think now. I know that, I pretty much lived in a plane, and I was in different cities on a daily basis, and just being able to come home and spend that time at home, and have that time to actually reflect and say, okay, I don't like what I'm hearing, or, really what's looking at the bigger picture and what's going on, for example, in the United States, and how, when you look at Black Lives Matter, I mean, to me, as a Métis citizen, I really didn't really pay attention, but I've had that opportunity to sort of look at what's coming through the media and connect with other peoples of color to sort of get a better understanding of what's going on. And really what I'm seeing is a parallel as well. And I'm just really giving it a second thought and sober thought on what's really happening. So, I mean, I think, COVID has really sort of brought to the forefront those thoughts, and it's really difficult to act on that because like you said, I personally am not going out and I'm not on the pavement or out on the road, trying to protect my territory or make a political statement or whatever going on, because it's not safe.
Yeah, I was going to go to the when there was a Black Lives Matter protest, in Ottawa like a month or so ago. I wanted to go, but I ended up just having a social distance hangout with some friends in the park instead, because we were all like, we don't feel safe, basically going to this big public protest, and yeah.
And I'm pretty worried too. I mean, I'm in my 50s now, so I'm not going to be, when I was in my 20s, I was very political. I was extremely political. We were in the middle of an AIDS pandemic, and, gay men, Indigenous men, 2SLGBTQ people were, and transgender were dying at rates, that really too many people have died in my life that I would want to talk about, or really I wish I would never had to really face, but I was very political in my 20s and 30s. And so I'm really worried about our young people, our young 2S LGBTQ community, the ones that are activists that are involved in all these different social political actions, because they're out there, and we're starting to see a surge of infections that are really in the 30s, 20s to 30s, in the younger adult age groups, right? So I'm really worried about social action, political action in a COVID-19 era. So I think about that a lot, and I personally I won't go to. I'm having a difficult time trying to even get to the dentist. I don't want to go to the dentist because I'm so worried, and I don't want to be around people and so forth. And so I'm struggling just to even get out to go get groceries. So I'm worried about our youth, our young two-spirited community.
Yeah, you brought up some really interesting points there about. Well, I think about like the knowledge and the wisdom that can come from like the queer community, the LGBTQ plus community, specifically with like struggling against another virus, right, like HIV, and a long history of just like silent neglect and not putting energy into finding drugs or cures for it, and also just living with that epidemic. Just wondering about, are there things that the queer community can teach the rest of the society about this kind of living with a virus? Like, we don't know how long this is gonna be around for, right? So I'm wondering if you guys have any thoughts about that.
I think we're going to be living with this virus for a very long time, and until, I mean, it's affected globally, right? And and I think about the HIV/AIDS epidemic, and what we lost a lot of artists and musicians and actors and lawyers and human rights defenders, and we lost a lot of of memory of who we as two-spirit LGBTQ community is. And now we're facing another epidemic, and it's going after those that are not well and those that are older. So we have a potential to lose a lot of our memory and our ability to pass and transmit information to our youth, as it is within our culture, how we sort of how we pass our knowledge on is, we're learning different ways now. We're doing it through Zoom now, but I mean, we're losing a lot of this pandemic is threatening our culture, our way of being, our people, our ability to transmit information to our youth. There's a lot of things that are at stake because of this illness. So I think I like the idea of, now we can do Zoom. I mean, we're having this conversation now. I'm in the middle of the bush, and I can actually, share and express and transmit information to those that are watching today, for example.
Yeah, I can't help but think about like certain First Nations communities that don't have a lot of language speakers. Well, I mean, that's probably most First Nations communities. That a lot of the speakers of the language tend to be, older people and elders. So specifically, they're the ones most susceptible to being harmed by COVID. So, I mean, I can't help but think about the dangers of the virus, specifically on, kind of harming culture and the transmission of culture in knowledge groups.
Well, even if there is even if there is a cure or a vaccine or treatment, I mean, how is this going to be communicated to the 2SLGBTQ community? I'm concerned about even the access issue around that for Indigenous people. A lot of these medications, are they being tested for Indigenous people? What about those that are in the 2S community that have multiple health conditions? How is that being managed? And when we finally do get a vaccine, who are the priority? Who's a priority? Is the 2S LGBTQ Indigenous community going to be back here? Or where are they going to place them so that they, and even just communicating this to our communities. Like, I mean, there's a lot of controversy on vaccines and taking vaccines and so forth. I mean, we have some historical negligences in terms of, how viruses have impacted our communities, so we look in the back of the history books and how that is, and how is that going to percolate, and how is that going to affect us moving forward when there is actually a treatment or a vaccine.
Yeah, those are good points. Yeah, I'm kind of, let me see my notes here. Yeah, I'm just thinking of like, what do you think's worse? Like, what's worse, colonialism or the global pandemic? Like, can we compare them? Are they?
Do you want to say something, Martin? Because I actually have something I want to say. Okay, so I feel like that the pandemic is really opening up all the weaknesses in our existence on this planet. We're seeing, how the healthcare system, for example, in different countries is just like a joke. We're seeing how people who are not wearing masks feel very entitled that they shouldn't be wearing. We're starting to see these different policies and ways of living and all these different things that are really we're starting to see things that we can poke holes in. They're not as strong or as viable as as people have been brainwashed to believe, right? And so, things are very different. And I think COVID it to me is a messenger, and has been really been, slow down the planet and our consumption on things. It has made us reflect and really look at ourselves if we take that time to do that. But also as a society, we're really seeing things as they really, really, truly are. And so, although colonialism is, I think, I wouldn't be able to match it together, but I can see how the effects of colonialism has now, in terms of a pandemic, and how how weak everything really, really is, and how unstable things really are, and how quickly everything could just crumble. And so, at the end of the day, I think Indigenous people are very, when I think about some of our approaches, our land, going back to our land, speaking about keeping the water clean and all these messages, we're starting to see how this is manifesting because of the effects of colonization. So I think there is a link to a number of things that are going on. And so I would say that, the COVID-19, I look at it as the messenger, and people really need to wake up and smell the bacon, so to speak.
Yeah, I kind of see it as like the pre-existing conditions, like pre-existing health conditions of the planet, right?
Yes.
Being
Yeah.
all the negative things that colonialism has brought, including white supremacy and this like ongoing forms of systemic discrimination, and I think that the global pandemic in a lot of ways has just kind of made the unhealthy things more visible in some ways.
Yeah.
Like we can see that there's problems with healthcare and with the way that health is operated in old folks' homes and stuff like that, and long-term care. And yeah, I think that I think that you're right when you said that we poked a lot of holes in the current state of the code. Andrew, did you want to weigh in on the question of whether or not what's worse, colonialism or the global pandemic?
I agree more along the lines of what Albert's saying. You can't necessarily take the two. You can see where they match up, but I don't think you can necessarily take one or the other and put it above the other. You are definitely seeing the breakdown of a lot of things, and with the way that things have been going. And you are seeing the weak points, the places where you can attack and something could possibly come down very, very quickly. So yeah, no, I'm totally in agreement with Albert and what he said about it's revealing the weaknesses. It's revealing the weak links and everything.
Well, I don't have a ton more questions. Maybe I have lots more questions. That's a lot. I'm wondering if you guys have any advice for other Indigenous youth or Two-Spirit youth out there, just in general, about any advice for Two-Spirit youth to keep existing and to keep surviving and to keep reclaiming their identities and cultures. Any advice for Two-Spirit youth out there? If you could sit your 20-year-old self down, or your 18-year-old self down, what would you tell them?
I'll let you go for first, Andrew. No, I don't mind. I'll let you go first because I'm just looking up something I want to share. So go ahead.
If I were speaking to my 18-year-old self, smarten up is something I tell myself at that age. But I think just keep going. It can feel a little tough, and it can feel a little like with every step you take that there's another 4 appearing in front of you, but you just have to keep going. There's And especially during these times, if you start slowing down and you start falling into those pits, then you need to be able to drag yourself out of it, and you need to look for that one thing that, even that just any day, just look for that one thing that brings you joy and that thing that makes you feel like everything is going to be okay. And as long as you can make it through that day and make it to the next day, you're going to be all right.
Good advice. Yeah, I always think of like the idea that things are always changing, right? And so like things might be shit right now, but maybe tomorrow things won't be shit.
Mm-hmm.
So like maybe
Yeah, tomorrow's a brand new day.
Yeah, tomorrow you might feel great tomorrow. Something terrible, something awful might happen, but then something great might happen. Things are always changing. So to answer my own question, I would say just wait. It's like the weather, man. It's like the weather. One terrible, the next it could be great.
So I just, for me, I wrote a chapter in a book called "Speaking the Wisdom of Our Time." It's a book that was edited and started by Dr. Kathy Richardson and Dr. Janine Carrier. They're both Métis academics, and in the chapter I write about sort of my beginnings as a Métis two-spirited person, and I go through sort of the coming out story. And one of the messages at the end, I left a message for those that are two-spirited, that are becoming or have been and are not becoming, but people are two-spirited, not becoming, but I'm trying to look for the right words, but they're coming into their own and learning about who they are, how they want to identify themselves, and gender and sexuality. And one of the things that I sort of, my messages have always been to sort of, take, things are going to always change. Things are not permanent. What you think today is going to be different tomorrow. There is going to be always a solution. It may not come to you right away. It'll come to you. It may come to you in 10 years. So you need to be patient, when you're, going through, these different things, and to be really gentle on yourself. Don't be hard on yourself. Society is already hard on you already. And so, I leave them with leave these messages with our youth, and our youth actually are our teachers. So I always say, speak your truth. Don't be shy. Say what you need to share, because what you're sharing is teaching me. It's sort of a reciprocal kind of, it's not a this or that or this or that. It's more of this. And we're on the same path, and we're moving in the same, whatever direction. And so, I always sort of leave youth with options and suggestions so that they can sort of keep on a path that keeps them balanced and moving forward. Because I know coming out was a nightmare in the in the 90s, and I know that still it is today. I mean, we have high rates of suicide in our communities, and so the message really needs to get out there, and that's the other thing. So
let's see, is Robert back?
Yeah.
Hi.
I hate to be that person to change the direction of conversation. Thank you so much. I just grateful just to be listening. So many things that was articulated how I've been feeling that you all were able to say in much better ways. Before we ask, hopefully we'll have time for a couple questions. We're going to end around quarter after. I just wanted to apologize to Albert for pronouncing his name incorrectly, saying the wrong name at the beginning. I've begged for forgiveness via the Zoom chat. So I will be sending him all kinds of goodies and apology gifts.
That's okay.
So yeah, so we did have one question that came through the Facebook chat. I'm going to rephrase it a little bit. But I do think that it's an important question, is in thinking about Indigenous Canada and overlaps with the negative impacts of so many things, as we all talked about, colonization, capitalism, so many things. And so what are some ways to be an effective ally to as non-Indigenous Canadians? Grouping myself in there as well. The question was, what category of whites are your allies? And I think that is a very unfair question. And I think certainly, even thinking about myself as a Black American that immigrated to Canada, and I don't consider myself a settler because I consider myself an arrivist. My family did not choose to come to North America. They were brought here. But I do benefit from settler colonial structures. And so that's something that I often think about in terms of how to be an ally to these two people whose land that I'm living on.
Mhm. I think, I think it's a really open-ended question. And I think you're going to get many different views, some personal, some political, some historical. I mean, I think there's a number of ways that, any Indigenous person that you would speak to would respond. I don't think there is a one answer that fits all. My personal belief is that as a Métis Nation citizen, we are self-sufficient, we are self-governing, and we are in a space where we are advancing on a nation to nation relationship with Canada at a political level. And so how that transcends is going to be different in application and how an individual may see that. So for example, education and having scholarships and programs that are available for Métis citizens, making sure that they actually go to the rightful peoples, as opposed to, when you're delivering, if you're going to be delivering those programs, or if you're going to create a program, do it in concert or in partnership with, for example, with the Métis people, for example. So, I mean, I think, it's a very broad question in terms of how, and like, you're going to get different answers, and my husband is a American citizen who I would say immigrated to Canada. And so, to me, he's my ally. I mean, any institution that he goes to, he works in academia, University of Ottawa. He is really pushing, Indigenous, incorporating Indigenous voices wherever he can make an influence. He's not doing it for them, but trying to open those doors. And he's very pragmatic when it comes to that, and just being very respectful of that. So there's different ways that we each can do it, but we need to learn about what's really going on. Learn the history. Thanks.
I would agree. I would say to be a good ally, you need to do your own learning. Don't go to Indigenous people and be like, educate me about the history of colonialism. Like go learn it yourself, so that you're not expecting, Indigenous people to educate you about, these histories. So go learn about residential schools. You should know what that is. Go learn about the 60s scoop. Go learn about, I don't know, whose land do you live on? Like, is it Algonquin territory? Is it Haudenosaunee territory? Like, learn about whose land you're actually on. Yeah, I would say do your own learning, and also just let Indigenous people speak for themselves and listen to what they say, and don't try and steal the microphone. I guess that would be my ally advice.
I agree with the both of you on that. Definitely do your own research, learn about it as much as you can. And then if you do have questions about the effects of what you're learning about have had, then go ahead and ask an Indigenous person about how their lives have been affected or what it's doing to them in this current situation. And then, of course, don't speak where it's not your place to speak. You know, I'm all for allyship and everything, but you know, the minute you start trying to step over or step on the people that you're trying to help, that it throws everything out of whack. And that's where I think it's nice to stand beside somebody in that rather than trying to step in front of them or step over them.
Said.
Thank you so much for those thoughtful answers. And I think 100%. And learning, listening, and also making sure that, just want to add to make sure that when you're learning that you're getting it from credible sources. Because there's certainly a lot of misinformation out there. And there's a plethora of scholars, writers, people who've already done this work. They've made it very easy to access. Yeah, so it's 10 after. I don't want to ask any more questions because I want to give everyone an opportunity to give their concluding thoughts to our audience. So anything you want to share in terms of what you want folks to take away from the conversation. It is Pride season, so if you want to share with anything how you're as far as in terms of virtual Pride, is there anything that you missed from in person or anything that you're appreciating about it being online this year? And that's it from me. So I just want to give my concluding thoughts on behalf of Max. Thanks for tuning into this great panel discussion. Thank you to Howard, Albert, and Andrew for joining us and your time. It's much appreciated. And I'll let you all take it away and wrap things up.
I don't really have any final words other than just happy Pride, and I hope you guys are able to celebrate in some way. I'm wearing this fancy hat. It's Gilligan's. It's
Loves it.
It's made by this this artist in New York City called Scrapping Boy. It's a little Pride hat, wings. Yeah. How about you, Albert?
I just gonna say I love your hat and I missed your mug. I miss all your mugs. I really actually miss. I think I'm really thinking about being grateful for everything that we have and the ability to actually communicate with each other and sort of connect, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic. And it really, when I think about our viewers and those that are going through, the anxiety and depression and the stress of this pandemic, I really know how you feel, and it's really going to take a lot of strength to sort of pull through this. And like I said, we went through the AIDS pandemic. We got through it. We're still going through it. We as a society, we can move forward. It's going to take a lot of strength. And so I wish everybody happy Pride, and I can't wait to see you guys and give you guys all a big hug.
All right, well, I just want to tell everybody, be kind to yourselves and just take it easy. Try not to get too buried up in what's in how things are going right now. Use this time to focus on yourself. Pick up a new skill or sharpen the ones that you already have. I wish Ottawa happy Pride all the way here from Toronto, and miss all of you guys. And I hope to see everybody back in Ottawa soon. And I know Pride is usually a big party, but when Pride happened here in Toronto, a lot of people weren't able to go out to patios, weren't able to go to celebrations. But what I noticed is that a lot of people took the time to actually sit with the people that they cared about around them this Pride. And so that's something that I want to leave our audience with at the end, is to take this Pride to really spend it with the people that you love and the people that support you, and be safe and take care of yourselves.
Thank you so much. And there is one last thing that I wanted to mention is I just wanted, and I apologize for doing this at the end, but I wanted to just give a special shout out to Rogers TV, who are participating with us and are helping us get this amazing panel discussion out to a broader audience. So I did just want to give credit where credit was due. So thank you so much. So hopefully
Thank
we
you,
reached a couple
Rogers.
extra voices and listening ears. And that's all. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves. Let's take care of each other. And hopefully I will get to see you all soon. And if not, another Zoom discussion. Take care, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.